This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Mr. Brock, you have 6 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to you witnesses for your attendance today. I'm going to start by making some opening remarks. This story broke as a result of an ATIP from a York University professor, an expert in privacy. It was turned over, the data was turned over to Radio Canada. Radio Canada reached out to your respective departments, asking if you're using the software, confirming you're using the software, and if you had first conducted privacy impact assessments. According to their written responses, as per Radio Canada, none did. So first question to the CBSA, when did you purchase the software, sir, from Shared Services Canada?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. The first procurement of Grey Key was in March of 2019. The first purchase of Celebrate premium units was in March of 2021.
Okay. And how many times have you used this particular software in question?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I couldn't tell you exactly how many times we've used the software. What I can tell you, for example, in 2023, we had 119 criminal investigations, during the course of which we seized 712 devices. When we say 712 devices, that will include, for example, the memory card or a SIM card that's in the cell phone. So a cell phone could count as 3 devices.
Okay. You'll table with this committee an actual number as to how many times you use this specific software from the data purchase?
I will do our very best. I can't assure you that we can count every single instance,
okay.
But we can certainly give you
stats.
So
we're talking hundreds.
I'd say, yes, in 2021, we seized 219.
Yeah, so we're talking hundreds and hundreds of investigations using this software, and not once did your department seek out a PIA, a privacy impact assessment. Is that correct?
So what we have done is we do have the privacy, the PIB, the privacy, I apologize, it's the acronym is slipping my memory
PIA?
right now. The PIB. So
PIB?
It's a PIB. So we posted online what types of information we are gathering, under what circumstances we're gathering, and how we're using it. We've started our internal process to do a program level PIA, because we want to do it at the program level, not at the device level.
If you understand, sir, that the PIA is not optional.
Agreed.
It's a directive by the Treasury Board.
Agreed.
And when the commissioner testified last week, Commissioner reached out to your department and specifically asked you, when are you going to start conducting PIAs? Your response was, well, we're looking into it, or we're about to start it. So what was your actual response? Are you still looking into the use of this mandated process, or have you actually started as a result of this controversy?
As I noted in my opening remarks, we started the process to doing a privacy impact assessment for the entire criminal investigations program in 2022. We're following our internal processes in doing so. As a result of that, we are now moving forward with the PIA that we'll work with the Privacy Commissioner on.
We have an auto theft crisis in this country. It's reaching alarming rates, so much so that the government is conducting a summit, which I believe is happening on this Thursday. The CBSA is in charge of protecting our borders, correct?
Amongst others, yes.
Yes. And Justin Trudeau's and this government's mismanagement of our federal ports has turned them into parking lots for stolen cars that then disappear overseas. For instance, in the Port of Montreal, where the majority of stolen cars leave Canada, the Port of Montreal only has 5 CBSA agents to inspect the massive volume of containers that leave each year, according to the Journal de Montréal. They also have 1 X-ray scanner that constantly breaks down. Federal ports in Vancouver, Prince Rupert, and Halifax tell a similar story. According to Peel detective Mark Haywood, the CBSA checks less than 1% of all containers leaving the country, and we're talking thousands of containers leaving every week. Why? With all the money the government is providing the CBSA, why are you contributing to this crisis? Point of order,
Chair.
What I would suggest...
Point of order. Relevance to this study?
Thank you for the point of order. I think I've mentioned this before, Ms. Damoff, that I generally give a lot of latitude to members of Parliament, and I expect that Mr. Brock will come back to where we're at. Perhaps we'll find out. He's got 1 minute and 31 seconds left. So, Mr. Brock, go ahead, please. You have the floor.
His title is Intelligence and Enforcement. This question I'm posing to him is squarely within his ability to answer that question. With the hundreds of millions of dollars that the government is transferring to the CBSA to assist you in doing your work to enforce, to inspect, why has the department been so derelict in its responsibilities to inspect these containers, which clearly sends a message to the criminal underworld and the organized crime units that Canada is a haven for this type of activity? So please explain to law enforcement, we have law enforcement right here, who I'm sure are very frustrated in your lack of attention to this issue. Why do we only have 5 agents?
So what I'd suggest is, in fact, that we are a key partner working with law enforcement across the country. Over the last year, we participated in 14 different joint operations with local police in the Toronto area, for example, working very closely with police in Ontario and Quebec to take a risk-based approach to examining containers. I think you understand that it's completely impossible to search every single container entering or leaving a port.
Why?
The sheer volume and numbers and thousands of those containers.
Ask for
so
the
what we are
resources.
doing is we are taking a risk-based approach using intelligence that we get from our partners in law enforcement.
Okay, so we're
to take a
telegraphing to
targeted
the
approach.
world, we're not inspecting the containers leaving, we're not inspecting the containers arriving. That's why we have a fentanyl crisis. We have illicit, deadly drugs
Point of
coming
order, Chair.
from Asia that are not being
Mr. Brock.
inspected by the ports in Vancouver.
Mr. Brock, 6 minutes is up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ms. Damoff, you have, sorry, on your point of order, Ms. Khalid, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, unless auto theft is being conducted by surveillance devices, I don't see how that's relevant, Chair.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And I'm wondering if Mr. Brock is suggesting that this software be used to combat auto theft. I didn't hear that work its way into his question, and trade would come to a halt if we inspected every single shipping container that left Canada. Is that not correct?
Did every single shipping container coming into the country and leaving the country, trade would come to a halt.
Thank you. So moving on to what our study is actually about, just a quick question.
Go ahead. Sorry, Ms. Damoff. Go ahead, Mr. Barrett.
So we had 2 Liberal members interrupt Mr. Brock, and then Ms. Damoff, because of his line of questioning, and then Ms. Damoff continued on the exact same line of questioning. So, this isn't a question, Chair, about the standing orders or about relevance. It's about looking to disrupt a member who rightfully has the floor, who's within his time, and who's asking questions and giving an opportunity to respond. We've seen this before, and if we want the meetings to descend into pure chaos, that invitation can be accepted. But I think that now that we've seen that there's games being played, I think that the disruptions from Liberal members need to end.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett.
That we're going to see a huge deviation in the answers that we're receiving. I think we've established, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, that the use of this technology is an investigative use, both whether it's through law enforcement agencies or through staff in terms of federal employees. I'm to understand that most of you have this within a legal framework. Have any of your agencies used it with your employees?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. We've used it on one occasion through an internal matter that was on consent, actually. So we used the digital forensic tools, but it was a consent matter.
Okay, and how about yourself?
No, not to my knowledge, no.
And how about yourself?
No, we haven't used it on employees.
And forgive me, I'm not impugning anybody, but drones are one way that contraband comes in. It's sometimes suggested that staff are sometimes involved, occasionally in rare occasions, on also bringing in contraband. You've never had an occasion to investigate or use this technology with any of the corrections staff?
So we would have occasions where we investigate staff.
Right.
Using specifically those software, no, it would
No.
have to be specifically within an investigation.
Is it safe to say that all, and you can just nod your heads and I'll repeat it for the people that might be listening. Is it safe to say that all of your staff are issued federally, issued devices, professional devices? Yes?
A large portion, yes, that would be correct.
And so, but in your case, none of them are ever monitored in this way?
So the mandate of my organization is outward facing.
Okay.
We do criminal investigations involving violations of border-related legislation. So
That's fair.
we're
And
not
notwithstanding the
looking
car thefts, I won't go there.
Look, I think one of the challenges here, we had different witnesses in the first hour of this meeting and talked a lot about the potential use of this technology when it comes to employees. I know there's ECCC, NRCan, a whole host of others. So you're talking about this in terms of law enforcement and its application, but I just want to, if I could, find out about where you're at when it comes to the people that work for your departments, those within law enforcement administration, not the program specifically, because you've answered that very clearly, but I'd like to hear from you about, is there tools, techniques, and methods to which you would observe employees and other individuals that work for you in terms of data that could be on their devices? So let's start with the RCMP, and I'm hoping for very brief responses because I have some other questions.
Thank you for the question. In short, no, we do not use any technology to monitor and or manage or supervise our employees. We do have a user agreement with all of the devices that we deploy. We do have a policy that governs the use of those devices. Naturally, in the organization that we have, there are times where members are subject to allegations of code of conduct and or criminal allegations where we may need to launch an internal investigation, where we may look to use digital forensic tools as a part of that investigation. As I alluded, we've used it on one occasion, and that was through consent.
I apologize, it's really short on time, so Mr. McCurry.
So again, the professional standards investigations takes place outside of my particular organization, so it's hard for me to comment on their techniques and what they do.
So if I could ask for you to bring that up to whoever within the CBSA is responsible for that, and if they could provide that answer in writing to this committee, that would be very helpful. And Ms. Graton.
So same, so we don't use any tools to observe or monitor our staff.
Okay.
Unless same situation.
If I could ask again for you to bring that up the chain and make sure that we get those answers to committee. Mr. McCurry, I'm curious because there's talks about investigations, and over the course of COVID, there was whether it's conversations around ArriveCan or the whole host of instances surrounding that, people who crossed the border during the pandemic when there were restrictions. Were these sorts of investigations ever initiated because of COVID-related enforcement?
What we're doing is enforcing criminal elements of border-related legislation. So, for example, individuals who will be counseling others on how to fraudulently obtain immigration documents, a student visa or a work visa, or individuals who are involved in the smuggling of firearms or parts. So individuals, we've got a case, went to court last year, April 2023 roughly, 12 years for manufacturing ghost guns and for smuggling the parts in. Those are the instances in which we use those tools to get the evidence, like our colleagues in the RCMP, to successfully prosecute those who have broken the criminal laws.
So it's very clearly limited to breaches of the criminal code. So for somebody who
border-related legislation. So under our own Customs Act, for example, in IRPA.
Okay. So I think that. So you're telling me, and feel free to clarify, that when it came to all COVID-related enforcement, there would not have been, this technology would not have been used in relation to COVID-related enforcement?
I'm not aware of any instance, I can't think of an instance where we would use it in the context of COVID. And again, the only instances in which we would use it would be with prior judicial authorization.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. So when it comes to, and Ms. Graton, I have just a few seconds left here, but there's for example, safe injection sites in our prisons. But there's kind of a don't ask, don't tell when an inmate goes to a safe injection site to use contraband. And quite often they had to get that from somewhere. So I'm just curious as to how to square this circle here about how enforcement and whatnot when it comes to the dynamics in a prison where there's alleged criminal activity, but there's a look another way when it comes to certain aspects of that. Could you comment briefly on how I square that?
Boy, does it ever have to be brief. Ms. Creton, je m'excuse, mais rapide.
I apologize. Quick answer, please.
Overdose prevention sites. So it's not a question of not looking at. It's a harm reduction program, and it's really to reinforce support and help inmates that are struggling with substance use. The distinction is that when we are dealing with trafficking, then we go with the enforcement, and that's where we get into taking measures and discipline to prevent the trafficking and the contraband. So it's two different programs.
Merci, Madame Graton. Mr. Curry.
Thank you, Ms. Creton.
Father, you're next. Unlimited time. You can have as much time because you're a new member or new guest on the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, that was very flattering. Thank you so much. So a Canadian sitting in Winnipeg can be sure that the RCMP is not, never having had possession of their device, extracting data from it.
Using these tools, that's correct, yes.
Well, we won't get into what other tools you may have at this point because that would be another study.